Well, welcome to another episode of The Sprout, where we are highlighting all the ways that Richland is bringing redemption and innovation through education in our community. This week, I have the honor to sit down with President Cris Valdez of Richland Community College and to discuss his thoughts around innovation and education and where it has evolved over the past decade or so. So, Cris, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to sit down and talk with you again. I am really eager to hear kind of your strategy and thoughts of how you've, in my opinion, revamped education a lot within the community aspect. So welcome, and let's start.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Cassie. You and Rich do fantastic work here. I'm pleased to be part of the great things that you're doing and lend some of my thoughts about things we're doing at Richland that have been adaptive and have helped us to move forward and allow students to be successful.
Right. Now, I know that you're typically a man behind the camera. So for the audience and people who may not know you, I'd love for you to explain maybe how long you've been in the community and how you got to Richland.
Sure. I had been a president at community colleges before. My entire higher education career has been in community colleges, but it was looking really to come back into the Midwest, and position was open in Decatur. I didn't know a whole lot about Richland Community College, but what I did know seemed like the fit for values were a good fit for me. Came here in July of 16, so this spring I'll be finishing up a full decade of work and leadership and collaboration at Richland Community College to help this community be a better community, hopefully.
That's wonderful. 10 years is a long time. And it's given you enough time, I think, probably to get some perspective of understanding how things have changed and evolved. And I'm sure education, I think, has evolved a lot over the past decade or two. And, you know, I'm curious of when you started at Richland, where you started seeing education shifting and the change that you started seeing.
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of points to note about that. And in 2016, when I arrived here in Decatur, one of those inflection points, especially here, was the understanding of how to better serve the community that where you were situated in. And certainly in Decatur, we are rich in manufacturing, agriculture, those kind of traditionally blue-collar vocations and professions and so forth. And one of the things that we saw and we heard very loudly from employers was that we can't wait. We can't wait 2 years for you to produce a engineering technologist or a computer scientist or an ag worker. We need those folks now. And so I would say probably the first thing that we began to focus on is how do we move people into training that allows them to be prepared for and contribute to the workforce in a short time. And so that was probably the biggest realization and was the genesis of Enrich and understanding that not only did we need to train individuals quickly, but those people needed to be job ready and be contributors to the businesses that they worked for, but also to be leaders in our community. And I think that really is the foundation of Enrich and our short-term training programs.
Yeah, I really like you guys being able to assess barriers and try to meet the need instead of maybe demanding the people to adapt to what we've kind of known higher education to be.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious, walk me through what some of those meetings look like. Where would that start? You realize that there's a need here. You realize that there's a gap here. Where did you guys begin to put some of these pieces in place?
It's interesting that you asked that question because in the fall of 17, we began to put a team together in Richland to talk about what would this short-term training program look like. And the discussion was based on what are the needs? And the serendipity of that was our focus was workforce development.
Right.
We had several businesses, ADM, Caterpillar, Mueller, at the time Tate & Lyle, now Primient, who said we need workers today. And that was really our primary focus, is how do we prepare those individuals? As we talked about that preparation and the need to have work-ready individuals, we began to look at the gaps in opportunity. And primarily those gaps existed based on lines of ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and oftentimes gender as well. And so the evolution, the serendipity of that evolution was that we started by saying, how do we meet the demands of our workforce companies here, and began to really focus on how do we provide opportunity to those individuals, those groups who historically have not had that opportunity.
Right.
How do we marry together this need for good workers and this historical propensity to not include entire populations? And that really became the focus. Is not only do we need to do training, but we need to uplift people, give them opportunities where they didn't see opportunity before, and equip them with the skills. And that's really how we came to essential skills that help them to be not only good employees, but good citizens, good husbands, wives, partners, siblings, that would make them successful in life regardless of employment.
Right. We had a great conversation with Tat a couple of weeks ago, and being an essential skills facilitator and all that essential skills implied. And, we really came to the conclusion that everybody needs essential skills. I feel like everybody, whether you're trying to get into the workforce or not, what you're learning from whether being self-managed, to responsibility, to work ethic, to trauma aware, to all sorts of things, it's just so applicable across the board.
Right.
And I think it's phenomenal that you guys have been able to integrate that into people, because you're building out a lot more than workforce. You're actually taking steps towards creating a healthier community at large.
I can't agree more with Tad in understanding that no matter where we're at in this journey we call life, there's opportunity for improvement, and to understand those triggers because of your life experiences that deter you from moving forward, prevent you sometimes from making good decisions or the right decisions are things that we can all benefit from. I'll talk a little bit about an irony that we experienced here at Richland with Enrich, because as we began to grow the program, there was this notion at some time that essential skills is fantastic for those people. And the whole idea of bringing people up is great for these populations. And so one of the things we've been very intentional about at the college is making sure that we all understand that trauma-informed practices, learning from trauma, essential skills are something we're not all only aware of, but we're trying to improve in our own lives and those that we train and educate. So just about a year ago, we essentially had two programs. We had a workforce program, and then we had a essential skills workforce program. And so we undid that. We combined those to say, these principles that we're teaching, whether they're the technical skills or the essential skills, are important to everyone who comes through these doors. And so we're really trying to make sure that we understand that essential skills isn't just good for those people; it's good for all of us. And we see that not only inside the campus, but we see that outside in how the individuals who have come to Richland to train have become leaders in industry, received promotions, had opportunities to move into leadership positions and so forth, because we know that those skills, as you said, Tad talked about, are important for all of us to improve.
Right. He and I had even made the observation of what you're talking about, how there was kind of this idea that it was for some people, but I may not need it. And, I had made the comment that usually the people that think they don't need it probably do need it. And like, if you think you know, you don't fully know, because we all carry to a degree, and some differently than others, but some sort of barrier, trauma, trigger, insecurity, something that prevents us that we need to help manage or understand and work through, right?
Yeah, I agree. And that is one of the things that we focus on in training in Enrich is triggering individuals to understand that trauma does exist. And trauma is idiosyncratic. What was traumatic for me in my growing years may not have been for you or for anyone else. But that doesn't mean that there aren't experiences in my life that prevent me from being the best person I can be, or any of your students from doing that. And using that understanding to know that this is what holds you back helps us to move forward. Because I think there are individuals who say, no, that's not me. I've never felt any trauma, and then until they're triggered and wonder why they're reacting like that.
Yeah. You mentioned that you work on triggering them. I'm kind of curious of what that actually would look like within maybe a classroom setting.
Yeah. Well, I'm not as knowledgeable about the details, but that really is the intent, is to understand that trauma is in the body. It's not necessarily how we speak or react. It is a visceral body reaction, and to allow someone to feel that is really helpful. One quick experience. Because we had this lesson with our board of trustees, and it's fairly simple, but I'll try to keep it contained to a shorter story. But essentially, we had one of our board members go out of the room. We instructed the other board members 3 different ways to interact with them. First one was silence. The second one was negativity, and the third one was positivity. Without going into more details, that was really kind of it. And then gave that person a task to do, and with each 3 of those experiences. And literally, you could see that they react differently. Because with silence, there was no encouragement, there was no negativity, but there was just nothing. And with negativity, the task was performed at a much lower level. And then positivity actually had success with the task. But what was more important, and that's really what we do in the classroom, was talk about what that triggering event looked like, not only for this board member who was the subject of the lesson, but others in the room, because they could feel how that person was not less. I mean, they probably didn't have the terminology, you could see he was triggered, or you could see this or that, but they could feel that. And I think we feel that around other individuals too. It's like, wow, there was just something off with this. And I think one of the greater understandings of that is not something's off with this person, something off with this situation. And how do we move back to a place where they can be generative, where they can be productive? Because where they're at right now is not either of those.
Right. You talking about that, I think through so many situations in the workforce or different places that I've worked or done. I actually worked at Starbucks for a decade, and I was a learning coach, and I brought people along and trained them, and managers and stuff. And just, you could instantly tell in body language whenever people would shift or shut down or approach a thing or feel, all of the stuff that you're describing, but there wasn't really a language or a pathway to kind of bring them out of it or to recognize what was going on and all the things that came with that. You're bringing a skill set that's needed, I would imagine, for anybody like we discussed, but also if we bring it back around to the workforce for longevity, for sustainability, for growth, productivity, even within the workforce for what these companies and places in our community are needing. I'm sure in the long run, it was going to affect their turnaround rates, their, all sorts of stuff within their company even.
Yeah, I think so. And two specific learnings that we have continually understood as we engage in this trauma-informed, resilience-focused practice, it's really about resilience and understanding that trauma exists, but the key is to move back to resilience and improvement and so forth. And so one of the things probably we've seen is the whole growth of empathy, because following these type of lessons where an individual's triggered, we would have other folks who were not, necessarily, they're really part of the audience, come to a facilitator or come to an employee and say, hey, that wasn't triggering for me, but I now see trauma in my life that has held me back, and help them to grow. And then secondly, the empathy that says, oftentimes when someone's not acting the way we expect them to, we say, what's wrong with that person?
Right.
And what understanding trauma does is help us to say what happened to that person, because it's episodic, right?
Yeah.
It's not how that person lives necessarily. It is the triggering that and the body visceral reaction, whether it's fight or flight, that just stunts growth in real time in that moment, and over time if that individual's re-triggered. So to understand that it's not you, Cassie, it's how your body's reacting to something that we don't even know about. And frankly, we don't always need to know.
Yeah.
But we need to have the tools, whether it's for ourselves or for others we're engaging with, to help them move back to resilience.
I like that you mentioned you may not need to know, because I would imagine that there's a difference between giving someone tools for self-regulation and processing, but also understanding you're not a therapist either, right, and there is a role outside of this that might need to be. Yeah. I'm helping you regulate and manage, but there is more to this for whether it's healing somewhere else, right? I'm helping you function, so to say.
Right, and in an environment where we're working through trauma and building resilience, it's more about being a friend, being a support, being willing to help, not be a mini therapist. Because oftentimes, allowing people to know the specifics of that trauma may be more traumatizing for the individual than just to say, hey, I'm here to help you, and how do we, move you back to health?
Yeah. I'm sure it's a hard dance sometimes, but I love seeing you guys integrating that in a lot of what you guys have been building, with your career of education. When you started within some of your career community college, was this really a thing yet? Was it something that I feel like, because I personally know your background is in with some social work and stuff too. So it's probably a way that you have always carried yourself and thought, but have you always seen it within education?
I think here's what I've seen over the nearly 3 decades of work that I've been engaged in higher ed. Initially, there are a number of higher education institutions, whether 2-year or 4-year sector, that had mental health professionals, specific counselors who were doing mental health work, usually short-term work, so forth. And there was this movement probably 15 years ago to say, hey, that's mental health. We're in education.
Yeah.
We really don't need mental health workers. We need educators. And, maybe part of that was due to budget constraints and so forth. But I think the ideology was that, if you need mental health, go get mental health because we educate. And certainly in the last 5-6 years, I think that was exacerbated by COVID. People understood that if we are going to educate individuals, we need to work with the whole person. And part of that is mental health. There's a number of other areas as well, but certainly the need to understand anxiety, depression, other kind of manifestations that our students were expressing, and to not have some source of service or relief or support just wasn't going to serve that whole individual. And so certainly as COVID came around, and even now we understand at a much higher level that, you can't separate educational pursuits and mental health challenges. And I think, as you said, to varying degrees, we all have some of those challenges that we're dealing with anyway. So why would we dismiss those for students who are trying to be successful at our institutions and change their lives and not understand that that's a barrier for them?
I think that there's a level of compartmentalizing. And I like how you talked about like the whole person, because whether I'm a wife, a mother, sitting here producing, doing the thing, a business owner, like whatever I'm doing, I'm still me. Right. And I bring all of me into those situations. And, it's not like your mental health or your spiritual health or any of that stuff shuts down all of a sudden because you're in a role. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty difficult to say, oh, yeah, I'm just going to close that door for a minute and not engage in that. And that was really, probably one of the other adaptations, which was probably a large endeavor for us, but it's been a while since we've done that. And so maybe we don't think about it as much, but in 2017, a lot of changes in 17 and 18. We moved away from an advising model for students to a coaching model. And in short, the difference between that is advising, at least how we structured it at Richland was, do you want to take algebra or accounting? Do you want to take English or communications? Yep. And coaching really more is about the whole person, as I said, and is more intrusive. But it's getting to learn about the student. Are you a son or daughter? Are you a spouse or a parent? Are you, tell me about you as a whole person. We'll figure out whether you need to take algebra or accounting. That's pretty simple.
Right.
But unless I understand you more so as a whole person, I'm not able to really help you and serve you in the ways because the fairly simple decision of whether it's math or accounting is easy. If I find myself in a crisis or something occurs third week of the semester, it won't matter whether I'm in accounting or algebra. Right. It will matter how well my coach or other folks in the institution, whether it's faculty or other staff, know me, understand me to help me move past that. And so that is really one of the major differences from being an advisor to being a coach. And then when you layer on trauma-informed practices and training specifically around trauma-informed, resilience-focused practices, it really helps us to connect with students. And I have a strong belief that we all are able to make those strides because of what's within us. But we all need some helping hand, someone to lend us some support at different times, because that's how we succeed, is through community and helping each other.
Right. And I think sometimes the beginning of that is just feeling seen. And with what you're training for your success coaches to essential skills facilitators to your leadership and staff, it sounds like you're really trying to bring a level of humanity, of feeling seen to people that walk through your door.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
We call that belonging. Right?
Yeah,
and not that you're unfamiliar with that term, but it's a sense that I belong here. If you're a first generation student, you don't know anyone else who's been in college. If you've had life experiences that say, you aren't college bound. I mean, I think, historically, we placed individuals, young people in paths that we thought they belonged to, higher education, military, work, so forth. And part of what I think we're doing in higher education now, especially at the community college level, is undoing that, right? Saying, you get to pick where your future lies. And we want to be part of that discovery and that completion and that success. But still, even if I say, okay, I come from a family, all my brothers went to the military, but I'm going to go to college, I may not feel like I belong there. So your sense of being seen, my sense of belonging is saying, hey, we see you here. You belong. You can be successful. And then part of it is, removing some of those barriers, understanding what prevents individuals from being successful without support and putting those in place.
Right. I know whenever, so probably about 20-ish years ago, I did not go to college right outside of high school, and neither of my parents really went to college and did the college thing. And so there was a bit of a dauntingness to it if you're not familiar, if you don't have some of that. But there was also something that I don't know if it was ever really articulated or explained to me, that the education process wasn't just to gain a certificate, but really the exposure, the critical thinking, the rubbing elbows with people that weren't like you, down to what you got along the process. Whether you ended up using that certificate to what you thought or not, you're a different person, right? And I think that for me, or that idea didn't really come until later on in life of understanding that I wish I would have understood that a bit differently back then. That it's really about the exposure and the transformation and the critical thinking and different worldviews and putting you in situations that were different and all the stuff that came along, honestly, with education, right?
Yeah, the whole notion of having an educated citizenry goes beyond certificates, diplomas, degrees, et cetera. It's being educated about the things that occur in our lives, that we can formulate opinions, formulate values, and be part of shaping this world that we live in, right? Whether it's your local community, your family, the country, or the world, you're informed enough to make critical decisions about how you want your piece of that to move forward, and how you want to contribute the city, country, in moving forward, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but there really is power in education of just truly understanding the growth and the process of continual learning and critical thinking really is bringing power to people.
Absolutely.
In however way that infiltrates into their life with things.
Right. Yeah. And, if nothing else, creating a curiosity to learn. And I think, we're not talking about whether we're learning algebra or accounting again. It's about learning about the forces in this country or this world that help us move to good or less than good. And how do you want to situate yourself in those? How involved do you want to be in those? And that all comes, we all have cycles where we're focused on family or education or work. But throughout all those cycles, the world's still spinning around us, and how much we want to be engaged in that work is important. And as you say, I think the more we know about it, the more we are curious, we discover more we're able to interact and be part of that positive change.
Yeah, it's making me think. I attended Richland before you were there, probably 15, almost 20 years ago with some things. And there's two professors that always stuck out to me because you're young and you're thinking it's about right or wrong.
Right.
And I had a professor that just changed the way I thought. And his name was Tom Morrow. So Professor Morrow, if you're listening to this, I still remember your class. But he taught ethics. And it always blew my mind that it wasn't down to the belief necessarily, but were you able to critically think and logically walk through this and understand critical thinking, whether you were for a subject or against a subject, or whether you thought more altruistically or this or that, but were you able to think through the process of why you think it? And it just always changed the way that I thought of things, because it wasn't always about the right or wrong of an issue, but more the logic, the critical thinking, the process. Are you able to do this and not all of a sudden get emotional or not get this or not get that and walk through these fallacies? And you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, and have an informed opinion and be able to critically think to get to that opinion.
Right.
And I think that's where authenticity and genuineness come from. Because I've thought about this. I've critically tried to understand the multitude of different angles and formed a belief or a thought that is educated, not just because I heard someone else say it, right?
And be open to change if you get new information.
Yes,
sometimes that's a hard one, right? People don't really want to change, but have that curiosity stay there of, if there is new information, I can pivot.
Right. Yeah, and to be able, I think what you're talking about as well, Cassie, is to be able to engage in discourse and dialogue for the purpose of learning, not for the purpose of saying, I know more than you, or my opinion or my position is right.
Right.
It's how do we make knowledge generative and grow from that, whether we agree or not.
Absolutely. As we're wrapping up here, I think that whenever I look at the 10 years that you've been at Richland and all the different things, and, we've had people on the show even talking about the dual credit programs, the prep academies, McCletsy, Essential Skills, Enrich, all of the different innovative approaches that you're really bringing into the community around. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to throw you a question that I didn't prepare, but moving into the next 5 to 10 years, is there something else on the horizon that you're seeing a need for and that you're hoping to adapt and innovate towards?
I appreciate the question. I really do, because I think this is a good connector to the conversation we were just having about learning and growing and so forth, because the easy answer would be AI and green energy and those kind of things.
Oh, sure.
And those are all going to be important in the future of not only Richland but the community and the country. But I think really what we're focusing on now, which has been a shift over the last couple of decades, there was this whole notion that you should early in your life understand where you want to go for a career and pursue that so that you're really good at that. And then we moved to, the world is, at your disposal and you choose what you want to do. But I think for us, as we look locally, the work that we've done with Prep Academy, with dual credit, increasing the number of students who are moving into college credits and completing college credits. And now what we've focused on is completing that 2-year degree by the time they reach age of majority is going to be a real focus of ours. As you look at growing communities, making communities strong, the simple answer is our youth, right?
Yeah.
And so many smaller communities face this brain drain, and young individuals, more than like 55% of high school students say, my main priority once I graduate is getting out of this community. And that, I mean, there's probably not any of us that wouldn't say we felt that at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
And if we're not able to retain our youth and to grow them into our future leaders, we risk these demise as communities. And I think the work that we're doing in dual credit, associate degree attainment by the time they graduate from high school, and now growing these pathways that would allow individuals to gain the skills at a baccalaureate level while they're working, interning or apprenticing with some of our larger companies, the ADMs, the TCCIs, Caterpillars, so that those young people can stay in this community, that they see a future for themselves. I think that means a future for our community and strengthening our community, and not, just wondering how many of our graduating high school seniors will leave.
Right.
But more so celebrating how many have stayed and how many opportunities we've created for them, and how we will continue to see leaders emerge and grow and support the community that they've lived in and want to continue to live in.
I love that. I am excited then about the next 5 to 10 years and what we can innovate and bring with the youth. I was talking to a mother the other day. Her son has just completed the prep academy and graduated with both. Mm-hmm. And she told me just how grateful she was. And honestly, if it wasn't for that, she didn't really know if her son would have had some of those that same opportunity.
Right.
And it just goes to show firsthand the example of really what you're coming alongside, wraparound services. Let's get them connected, plugged in, and supported at a young enough age that you can change the trajectory of really what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think I appreciate that story, because I think we hear those more and more, and we will hear more of those. Like, I didn't think this was possible, and you helped my child to realize that when they were 17, versus what community colleges have been is connecting with that person when they're 37.
Yeah.
Because we all have those capabilities to learn. We all have those capabilities to be successful and to be leaders. And if we can infuse that, provide that opportunity for young people to understand that when they're 15, 16, 17, it's not to say we wouldn't do that when they're 35, 36, 37, but if we can capture that and give them the confidence, give them the support, provide them the opportunities to do that at a young age, I think that's a great plan for us.
Absolutely. And bring in the essential skills and the whole person along with it, man. I love it. Well, I am thankful that we've been able to partner with Richland in this season of even creating the show and really bringing and highlighting the things that you guys are doing, not just within education, but I think the ripple effect that it has within our community. So thank you so much for coming down and talking to us, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again.
I'd love to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.